welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today, joining myself and our panelists. Farjar and Harshit thought it was a great idea to maybe cover some top coder case studies, design case studies, talk about UI, UX. My approach to this is kind of a retrospective. I had a lot of fun looking back and looking at the history of top coder design. And so I'm going to cover that a little bit in the beginning. And I have a couple case studies. They get a little long, but my goal with this webinar is to highlight the designs and highlight the designers, and to, of course, ask our panelists some questions and see what they remember from these customer case studies, the problems that we were trying to solve. My name is Adam Moorhead. I am Vice President Community at Top Coder. I have been at Top Coder now 15 years, and in 2006 was a co-founder, co-creator of what we now call Top Coder Design. On the panel with me, I have Farjar, who is one of our Top Coder co-pilots out of Indonesia.
Hi, guys.
We also have Vicky, who is also a Top Coder designer and co-pilot.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. We also have our top designer and two-time Top Coder design champion, I am Tong, with us.
Hello.
And then we also have Daniela or Dara K, who is also a Top Coder designer and co-pilot.
Hi, everyone.
And then I may be calling on a few people out in the crowd. We also, I know, we also have Iriantu here and Toxic Pixel. So depending on which case studies we get to, we'll see how this goes. So let's see here, jumping into it. I just want to give everyone a little bit of history. So thinking about Top Coder design, UI, UX, and the journey that we've gone on. I obviously went down a rabbit hole, and I think I could probably talk for 5 or 6 hours about all the different things I dug up and all the memories I dug up. But I just wanted to highlight, we started back in 2006. Back then we were Studio Top Coder, and then we eventually moved that into Top Coder Studio, and then Top Coder Design Studio, and now we are Top Coder Design. So we merged everything into just Top Coder. In the early days, obviously being that our company name is Top Coder, it was a little hard to find designers to work on the challenges that we were launching. In 2006, the idea was, how do we leverage the Top Coder model? So the way we break work down, we atomize it, we put it out to our great community. How can we do that in the design model? How can we do that with design and get what I would say would be great user interface and great user experiences back? And so when I was originally asked about this, I was not a fan. This is something that I don't think is going to work. I'm a designer. I want to do the work. I'm not really interested in, sharing these kinds of things. But, the ask of me was to help try and solve this, and I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure that I'm thinking about the designer. I'm thinking about the process. And while we are, yes, running challenges and competitions, how can we put a structure in place that there may be multiple steps of multiple times that you might be able to get paid and win? And of course, how do we use competition to drive quality in what we do? And then also, what are the types of questions we're asking our designers? Like when customers come to us, what are we trying to solve? Not just about making things look pretty, but actually focusing in on the user experience. And what I've learned over the years is asking this amazing community of designers and the panelists we have here all around the world, their experiences matter, and their experiences matter in how they approach the problems that our customers bring to us. And I think that's the power of what we really do here at Top Coder Design. So Top Coder Design, again, we are a global community focused on solving real world user experience problems through our crowd, through our Top Coder model. So we are a challenge-based process where designers submit their concepts or solutions for critique and feedback by our customers. So a big initiative of ours is to make sure our customers are engaged and, of course, providing feedback so the designers can improve, but of course, we can get great designs to our customers. And being that our name is Top Coder, we obviously get a lot of hard problems that come our way. So in this design process, we promote design education, open design thinking, and innovation through rapid design. So the case studies I'm going to go through have a lot of this rapid design concept, this idea of rapidly getting into a problem and trying to solve it. So this whole process is about challenging ourselves, the way we think about design, so the design process, and the way we work together as a design community. When I was asked to put this together, I also wanted to make sure that we were following some of the traditional things that we do in design. So information architecture, the planning out of the different things that we want to tackle. So at Top Coder, we focused in information architecture on wireframing and design direction challenges. And I'll cover one of those later on in the samples. And the goal is to visually capture the requirements so we can obviously provide great insights into our UI and UX process. User interface design, so this is where we do focus in on obviously how things look and do they look well, but of course I think bringing everyone's their own experiences and the way they interpret the requirements and the user personas and the users is where the UX piece comes into this. And of course, this is tied into design concepts, mobile, web, and application design. Then we get into front-end development, which I'm not going to talk about today, but this is really how do we go and realize the vision, the designer vision in code. Again, we are Top Coder, so we do that very well. And then we have this thing as what we call talent as a service. So this is where I'm going to talk about where we've leveraged designers, some of them here in this panel, to actually work directly with customers. So I'm going to jump right into this. This whole thing is about talking about projects, talking about history and case studies. So the very first one that came to mind, just because I think it incorporated everything that we do here at Top Coder Design, was our Vulcan project. Vulcan is a code name, so we obviously use code names and keep some of our customer information confidential at times. This one is actually out there, but I wanted to make sure we kept with the code name in this specific case. So what was unique about this project was we ran 3 rapid user experience challenges back to back. So a RUX in the Top Coder world is a 72-hour challenge, design challenge. And so what was crazy about this is that we ran them back to back to back. So we ran a challenge for 72 hours. Customer picked winners, and then pretty much 24 to 48 hours later, we launched another 72-hour challenge. We ran that one, and then another 24 hours, we launched another one. And so our co-pilot, our co-pilot is someone in the Top Coder community who runs and manages our process, was Daniela Darake and Farjar, who is our panelists. So before I jump into more of this, Daniela or Farjar, do you guys have any comments on just the beginnings of Vulcan? And if you don't, it's okay.
Yeah, I think this one is tough because we basically running 3 fast challenge, and it's for 2 different devices, and it's also a concept that's not have many exploration at that time. So this one is really great for to discuss right now.
Yeah. So as Farjar said, so this was Vulcan is a customer of ours that is manufacturer. So they have a lot of factories around the world, and so what they were looking to do was to focus in on 3 personas: a plant technician, a technician subject matter expert, and a command center operations manager. So we were looking to quickly explore what we were calling our visual collaboration tool. And the visual collaboration tool was bringing in some AR, and essentially it was going to be glassware. So that this idea of what would be the technician in the factory. Then we also have our nerve center design, which is essentially a giant, imagine these giant screens, almost NASA style command center screens, okay? And then we wanted to refine all of that. So customer came to us, we did a 3-day workshop, myself and another designer at Topcoder, sat down with them. We did 3 days of exploring the requirements, exploring what they wanted to tackle, and then taking those requirements and then turning them around to our community so we could run these rapid design challenges. And so the very first one was on the plant technician. And so this one was really, again, quickly conceptualizing this new application to kind of change this traditional factory setting. And this is tied for the technician to be able to then also talk to a subject matter expert. And the key thing was going to be these wearable glasses. Now, the technology for the wearable glasses was not decided. So we were looking at 3 or 4 different vendors. So that piece was still open. That could be refined later. We really just wanted to explore the potential of this technology. So our winners in this challenge was I Am Infinite out of Indonesia, Brian Benar out of Indonesia, Per Vicky out of Hungary, I Am Tong out of Thailand, and Kanusha Wan out of Indonesia. So when we run a RUX challenge, it's 72 hours. It's very large prizes, and we typically have 5 placements. So I Am Infinite was our first place winner. And so tackling this kind of glassware, AR environment, our customer said, hey, we would like a future type UI. We're kind of interested in how that might look. So that was our initial kind of ask, was like, where could this futuristic, think, Marvel movies, think Star Trek, think like future. And then of course, how do those colors interact? How are we going to be able to see through things? But the key thing is that we want this factory worker to be able to go up to a machine and be able to analyze and understand the situation of the machine using IIoT data and be able to fix the machine on their own. And if they're not able to fix the machine on their own, call in their global talent pool of subject matter experts to be able to help. So this was I Am Infinite's initial, this was his winning design on this specific challenge. And the second place was Brian. And so you can see kind of this looking through the lens, being able to see the device, being able to see different contextual menus. Now, the issue that we ended up coming up with is things start to get busy, right? You start seeing how in this heads-up display kind of UI, what am I seeing? What am I interacting with? And kind of like what's the key, really kind of colors and interface that's going to matter, because there's so many different things that could happen on the factory floor. Paravicu. So you'll see as we go throughout this, there's a story here of rapid design evolving with refinement and getting really to where the customer wanted to go. Paravicu did a great job of diving into the ask and showing like, hey, if I'm in this factory, this idea of being able to walk around with my heads-up display, with my glassware, and being able to see other machines, what's the data that's coming from that, what's everything being transmitted throughout the factory. Some of this is hypothetical, yes. The customer was interested in that. We know that we have the data. Now the question is going to be, we want to explore potential uses of that data, and then we'll marry that up later. And I Am Tong. So I Am Tong here, in my opinion, brought probably a little more of a traditional UI approach to this, like with the contextual menus and with the overlays. Again, being able to dive in and say, hey, how can we interact and pinpoint problems? A key thing of this was also to bring up all the documentation about a potential asset. So on the factory floor, all the devices are assets. And a key request from our customer was to look at this from the asset view. An app like this, you can go top down and really kind of drill in on it. And our customer wanted to look more from the bottom up. So starting at the asset, what's the information we have? How can we explore this and understand the asset more, and then of course be able to understand what's that data, and then be able to, again, with that comes maintenance, the ability to monitor, the ability to do self-checks, the ability for the plant technician to fix things sooner than later. In fifth place, Ganeshwan. Again, probably a little more of a traditional approach here, but this is what was great about the Rux, was that our customer was able to see a variety of approaches, from kind of this futuristic UI to like, hey, like what's actually really practical and makes sense. And then of course, each of the designers in this challenge did their research. They dug in, understanding IoT, understanding different glassware. So as part of this challenge, everyone here had to do some quick research and kind of understand, because not everyone here is, you know, a factory UX UI expert, right? So Vicky, before I move on, do you have any thoughts on kind of the initial like entrance into this challenge series, and kind of what some of the struggles you may have had, just kind of first understanding you know, the initial requirements? Vicky, did you sorry, that was
sorry.
a
Sorry,
yeah,
I lost the connection. Just right there. What was the
oh,
question?
it's okay. The question was, so my question was, when you first saw this, I know that you had a lot of questions around the requirements and the user. So like, what were some of your initial approaches to learning about the problem and learning to solve for this this unique factory situation? Did I lose you again?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I'll keep going. I'll come back to you.
Okay.
So what we did next was we ran another rapid user experience challenge. Customer selected winners, and we learned things in that first challenge. We learned some of the user interface items that our customer liked and didn't like. We learned, obviously, the designers brought a wealth of information and questions around the experience, and doubts about what's possible and not possible with the tooling. The second challenge was focused on the command center. Okay, so we have this factory technician. That information from the factory technician and all the factory data is going to come to this command center. Okay, so we have people in a command center looking at these big giant screens, and this data is coming in, and how do they interpret and handle that data? And of course, as alerts and things happen, how can they deal with information in real time? So this was like 100 plus plants, 1,500 plus machines around the globe. So how do you kind of manage all of this? And so taking what we learned from the first one, we launched another 72-hour design challenge on the command center. Okay. And so Karm was our winner. Vicky is again in here, and she took second. We have Ashish out of India, Aviv out of Indonesia, and I'm Infinite, who took first in the first one, it took fifth in the second Rapid User Experience Challenge. So in this second one, the customer was still interested in kind of this futuristic UI, but we wanted to get rid of, there was a lot of kind of frill and extraneous stuff coming. We wanted to focus in on the data and how do we actually see this and how do we react to it. So while this specific design ends up becoming too dark, it was a really great solve on kind of breaking up the information. Because as you can imagine, there's all of these assets. We're looking at this from the asset view. How do you bring this information and populate it? And then of course, alert the people in the nerve center of how to react to this information. Like what's the important data? So this is the stuff that we were really looking to dive into and explore. So I'm Infinite did a great job of really kind of structuring the information. And then of course, structuring how all of that asset data is being pulled together. One of the key things here was also being able to understand the flow of projects on the factory floor. So being able to in this dashboard understand that if a machine goes down, how does that impact other machines? How does that impact orders? How does that, so like all of this is information that our community needed to learn. So one of the questions that I get a lot about Top Coder design is like, you don't have domain experts. Well, by doing these rapid user experience challenges, our community jumped in and did their research, and of course asked our customer a lot of questions to become experts in understanding this type of user experience challenge. Second was Vicky. So Vicky did a great job of understanding that this is going to be a big giant screen. So what we're looking at here is the left side of the screen. And this is understanding the assets, and of course knowing like what assets are okay, which ones are off, which ones might be having issues within a few minutes to a few hours to a few days, and then being able to process those different assets. And this is the right side of the big giant nerve center. So then if there are issues with things, how do you assign those things to specific technicians and subject matter experts, things like that. So in her submission, she did a great job of actually capturing kind of like what this might look like from her preview, from her presentation screen view, what it might look like in the command center. Third was Ashish. So he brought in, again, kind of this great idea of like, how are we looking at these metrics? How are we understanding this data? He actually did a really great in-depth understanding of how we'd actually be scheduling all the technicians to handle the information coming in, how the nerve center could process those things. And fourth was Aviv. Again, you can kind of see some similar themes here, but again, how do we bring this information to the top? He kind of brought in this Trello board approach of understanding what's going on in the backlog, to do, in progress. And this was a great piece of exploration. Our customer saw that. It was like, hey, that's an idea we could explore, ended up not being interested in it, but that's why we do these kind of rapid challenges, because it brings up different approaches and different solves to what's the potential of this experience. And then Aviv also did a great job of what is all the, there's going to be a lot of detail in here, right? So how are we interacting with this from a command center screen to a laptop screen to a desktop screen? What is kind of like the different information that we're going to try and have to dive into, and of course send out to the rest of the team. And then fifth was I Am Infinite. So if you recall, in the first one, he had more of the kind of futuristic green, and maybe I would classify it kind of in the Star Trek UI world. And so he continued that here, and from a lot of the feedback from this was our customers still very interested in this, but wanted to remove kind of the extra little pieces. There's no need for that kind of gaming UI. It was more about, okay, the data has to be understood, and the data has to be easy to interpret. And then this is I'm Infinite capturing the video coming from that, the glassware from the technician. So being able to see this in the nerve center. So as you can see, we're taking a little bit of a journey. First one was on the glassware. Second is now in the command center. So now we've launched another rapid user experience challenge to refine the technician flow, but also to now involve what we're calling our subject matter expert. So this person who may be on an iPad working with that technician in the factory. So this idea, like at Top Coder, we do crowdsourcing. So crowdsourcing the experts around the world to be able to collaborate and work and be able to drive these outcomes. So Vicky, you saw first couple challenges, she was on a little journey, so she ended up taking first in this one. So really kind of diving into the different requirements and understanding what was going on. We had some new designers come in that hadn't won in the previous challenges, Johnny7, UJazz, and Cystic. So Tong was also a placer in this refinement challenge. And Vicky pulled kind of all the things together, the refinement of the UI, the refinement of our asks from the customer, and really kind of diving into like what's this glassware experience going to be, and really kind of what's, let's pull it all together, refine it, and then really understand the entire flow. Johnny did a great job with the graphics of understanding the asset. Our customer really liked the asset details in his design and his approach, but again, was still leaning more towards the approach that Vicky had for the entire solve. But Johnny brought in a lot of different things that we pulled into the final solution. And then UJazz, I always love it when he jumps into a challenge, because he always brings a lot of creative research, and he really dove into like the actual possibilities of what we could do in the headsets. And so he brought a lot of reality. We've been doing a lot of exploration. We've been like potential of what this could do. We hadn't decided on the headset yet, and UJazz said, okay, if you're doing HoloLens, this is what's going to happen. If you're using a different headset, this is what you're going to have to understand. So the research and the information he brought in from his submission and his ideas really helped refine how we tackled this, the next steps and the next refinements. I Am Tong, again, did a great refinement, bringing in clarity, a lot of clarity in on how the user would interact and navigate and understand the different helps and UI elements as they are interacting with the assets. And then Cystic brought in, again, some more clarity in simplifying, like, okay, if I have this asset in my view, how am I interacting with these different documents, and really kind of what are the different things that I'm seeing in my bottom left of my view, bottom of my view, and how am I interacting with those navigational elements. So overall, solid approach to the different designs. And what was really great in this whole experience is that, like, for everyone here, like, it's the designers, when they submitted on these challenges, I'm only showing you a couple screens. They submitted probably 10 screens to 15 screens to incorporate the experience, okay, to understand what that entire experience was all about. So I'm gonna share one thing. So this is the overall kind of completed flow for this project. And when we look at this, we're looking at, this is right here, 172 screens that takes our technician through their entire glassware experience, then going into the subject matter tablet experience, and then going into the nerve center, command center experience. So a lot of great ideas, a lot of technical refinement, design refinement that went into this. And that was possible, and this is one of the reasons why I love this story, is because after we ran those 3 rapid user experience challenges back to back to back, we then asked our top designers, the designers who did well in those challenges and did the research and put a lot of effort into it, we asked them to join our talent as a service design team. We asked them to kind of come together, and what we did was we ran competitions within that group. This way, they interacted directly with our customer. Everyone was understanding the subject matter, was understanding where we're at in this part of the journey. And then we were able to refine that entire flow, which was what I thought was, great to the overall process, the overall UX process. Rapid design, driving rapid outcomes, thought, and now honing in on how do we go ahead and push through and like, this is not something we're going to go build tomorrow, right? The idea is that we got to a point that we could have amazing discussions, more workshops, and then of course continue to understand what the users were needing. Now we could take this and put this in front of users, the plant technician, put this in front of the SME, put this in front of the nerve center. And so as part of this, as part of the design team, we use Top Critter Connect as our interface with our customer, because everyone's remote and global. We use Slack. We built everything in Sketch. We used Marvel app for prototyping. We used Abstract for version control. And then we did some user testing with Maze. So Paraviki, can you hear me now? I want to come back to you.
Yep.
Okay. So I know you have some stories related to this because you obviously went through a journey on this, and we ended up leveraging more of kind of some of the pieces that you pulled together. What do you remember, or kind of like when I asked you about this project, what was kind of the aha for you?
Yeah, I think that this is one of the most memorable projects I have participated in through Top Coder. At the end, it made me qualify for TCO 19, so it was great. Yeah, as you said, it was kind of a journey through all these Roxes, because I got to understand the style, what they are looking for better and better. Because I remember at the beginning, we were really into this futuristic everything, and then they didn't like it after a while. So it was really a journey as we started to understand what they are really looking for. I also remember that I had some conversations with friends who are into this sensor business and everything. So I tried to find out as much information as I could about all of this, which I had obviously no idea about that before the challenges. And then when we stepped into the task mode, it was again a whole new experience. As first of all, because we had a chance to communicate with the client, which was great. I was really waiting for this moment. Even if sometimes it was a really it was a bit problematic. I remember one case, I don't know if you guys remember this, that I asked something from the client directly, and then I think it made him think, and then he wanted something else, so he started to kind of pivot from the original approach or something like that. So Adam had to jump in and manage this situation, and I think that was the last occasion when we members got introduced to clients directly like this, because it can be problematic a little bit.
Oh, no, I think that's part of the process. I think that's, I mean, if I recall, it was a great question. The questions that have to be asked, right?
Uh-huh.
So it got him thinking, and the whole, this whole thing is about that, right? It's about asking those questions so we can get to, the best solve that we can do.
Uh-huh. And then I really enjoyed that whenever we were in task mode already, we were engaged in tasks or private challenges against each other. And then since we were using version control, we had a chance to work on others' files. So we had a chance to see what their approaches were, and we had to build on the others' IDs and the files and everything. So actually we could see how they work in their, how they manage their files, even to that small, going down to the small level as well, to see how the other designer handles his symbols in a file or something like that. That was also interesting to experience. And then what I realized, I made my research about these challenges, that it was funny. It was during the winter, and 2 of the challenges had been announced over either Christmas or New Year. So it was it was like a present for us who won, at least. And I've learned a lot during that couple of weeks. I don't remember how long it took, but we have learned a lot. And especially when it's a series of challenges, so not only a rocks when you have 3 days to learn about the subject. When you have weeks, it makes you a kind of an expert of these kind of things, and it is really interesting for me. I like to learn about new things. So it was awesome in this sense as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yes, and that was the thing. It was such a beautiful journey, and it was a great collaboration. I think just with, like, once we got past the Rux challenges and had the design pool, right, the task pool, it was a lot of fun, because I think all of you got to learn from each other. Like you said, it's almost like, what's your design from a technical design standpoint? Obviously, all these new tools that we're leveraging. But then also just to be able to ask each other questions, right? So, and ask the customer questions. The customer's obviously super engaged at that point even more. Okay. Fajar, Daniela, or Tong, you guys have any other thoughts on Vulcan? Or I can move to the next case study. If you have anything you remember, or anything you want to point out. All good?
So what I liked the most about it was, first of all, the technology type and everything related to augmented reality, and the fact that we got such a big project for the community and it was new and exciting. And then like the members did such an in-depth analysis of requirements, and they asked so many questions on forums, and they wanted to understand, which they don't get the chance on any challenge, you know. And when we worked in task mode, because we had all the members on Slack, like the communication and the explanation and the delivery was working much more faster than on a regular challenge. And basically the designers were helping each other sometimes because we weren't online due to time zone, and they were trying to explain each other things, although they were competing, you know, which is pretty cool all the time. And then when we added the customer in the flow, things went even smoother because it was no copilot. We weren't in the middle that much, and they could basically bring ideas to the customer. The customer was also bringing ideas, so you can see like this sparkle of things. Look what we can do with so many people and so many great ideas. Like, where would this application go out? You know?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I just brought up, this is the end result, or one of the latest versions of it in the command center, or how it would be up on the big screen. So, okay, I'm going to now jump into our next project. This one is not 3 challenges. This was Project Dream, and this was actually 1 challenge, and then working with our winner. But again, I thought it was such a great process and exploration and journey that I wanted to after the how big the first case study is. This one is like the complete opposite. So this is Project Dream, and this is where our partner Sam Amarazzo at BNMC, Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, worked with our customer, Dr. Dan, to work on a telemedicine application for sleep apnea. So they did a design thinking workshop to work through the different customer, existing customer, new customer scenarios. This idea from Dr. Dan is really to take this very long process that it takes a customer, a patient, over 7 visits at a sleep center to be diagnosed, and it takes a patient away from work, and it takes them, it's just a long and arduous process. And so how can we turn this into a digital experience, a telemedicine experience? And then of course, with like just the need right this minute globally, how we need, more telemedicine type applications. This was very great timing for Dr. Dan. And so Sam worked with him. They did a design thinking workshop, as I said, and those artifacts that came out of that, essentially a mind mapping and the persona exploration and the initial sketches, we leveraged as input into what we call a design direction challenge. So a design direction challenge is a little bit of information architecture, a little bit of UI UX, and the goal is to not really focus on super high fidelity, but to take the outcomes from this workshop and just ask the community to explore and to take it to another level. And so what was great about this was Sam and Dr. Dan were able to quickly see some results within 24 hours is when we had our initial review, and then 48 hours after that we had the final results. So this was what the challenge would look like on the TopCoder platform. We had 5 placements. Again, this was not meant to be as large as a Rux or a Lux challenge. It was meant to be a quick kind of down and dirty information architecture type approach. Now, our winner here, I am Tong, who's our panelist also, did end up doing more of a high fidelity result, but he did a great exploration of what the customer is looking for. Toxic Pixel out of South Africa was our second place. For Rule took third, Handy Putra took fourth, and NPixel took fifth. And so when we look at this first place design, this is what Tong ended up coming up with. But what was unique about this is the type of artifacts that our designers, Tong and Toxic Pixel, came up with. So this was, again, it wasn't meant to completely flesh through everything, but really to kind of give some recommendations on color scheme and approach to the flow. So understanding based on that design workshop, we knew the user, a new patient would do one, a new patient would need to do two. So, and this was like exploration of the chatbot. So how do we get a new patient in there quickly and explore, like being able to understand their sleep apnea. And then getting into, again, the overall intro, information collection, evaluation. So how do we handle this? How do we use, obviously, modern technology, Zoom, things like that? And how do we allow a doctor to work with this new patient? And then consult with them, follow up, and of course, repeating the steps. So while a design direction challenge is meant to be low fidelity, I think Tong thinks in high fidelity, so he was able to just quickly dive in and process this. Second place, Toxic Pixel, again, did a great job diving into just putting out their different ideas. This, again, was within 24 hours. So the design workshop, Sam and Dr. Dan sent us over the information. We launched our design direction challenge, and within 24 hours, we had initial flows, initial ideas. We provided the designers feedback, and these are the final results, essentially after 48 hours. And so Toxic Pixel did a great job of, again, kind of walking through how this might work, understanding the onboarding, the chat experience, user registration, how is the consulting possibly going to work. Again, you know, the goal not being that we're not gonna go turn around and just build this, but we want to just see different concepts, different approaches to the solve of this design problem. Scheduling an appointment. How is the Zoom and the consultation video going to work? Because obviously it's super critical here in the telemedicine aspect of it. Scheduling appointments, and then really understanding that full journey. So amazing job, and outcomes within, honestly, a couple days of work. So the key thing here was that, you know, this really got Dr. Dan motivated and running quickly. He was able to see these, think through them, understand where, I mean, he's the doctor here, understand where things need to be adjusted and fixed and where the flow can be refined. Again, here's Toxic Pixel for Rule. So again, more in the wireframe information architecture side of things. Handy Putra. And NPixel. So this journey was a great, you know, enlightening and journey for Dr. Dan, because with Sam, he was able to do this design thinking, understand really kind of the patient requirements, and then of course Tong was able to come up with a great solve. So Tong, if you have any thoughts or like what you remember from this project and the initial journey, because you did what you did, obviously come up with a solution that Dr. Dan was very happy with, and we ended up working with you directly on refining the rest of it. So do you have any thoughts or anecdotes or what you remember?
So it was great fun working on this one, because like we are free to suggest to client what would it be, what should it looks like from the design direction perspective, right? And then, I mean, the thing is about design direction is about how you are going to show the client the concept, the main functions, but you don't have to go through all the details and the flow. Yeah, so that is kind of cool about this direction challenge.
Yep. And then the other piece of this is, Dan, with your assistance over time of refining this and working with Dr. Dan, they were able to get this essentially developed pretty quickly. And you also helped during the development process, right? So kind of design maintenance and any updates to the flows. Any thoughts on that?
It was actually great working with Dr. Dan, because like we are not subject matter expert in this field, and I didn't actually have a knowledge of like how the process would be, how let's say when they get a new patient, they sign up, they schedule the first consultation, and what's next, what the home test device were sent, and then like and some follow-up stuff. And we were working on like different loads for desktop application as well, like for doctor, for technicians, and for like admins, for secretaries. So like I needed to ask Dr. Dan like a lot of questions, and he has been like
great. Yeah,
really,
I did forget that. So
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, Dr. Dan is here.
Yeah, I did forget. So this is we're showing the mobile aspect of it, but we did have the desktop, which is the doctor view. So obviously this is the patient view.
And speaking of the production now, I think the mobile app is going to live in a few days, maybe.
Yep. Yeah. So we were able to rapidly kind of dive into that, and of course, Dr. Dan wants to get this out there as soon as possible. So if Dr. Dan is on, thank you. Thanks for being a great customer. Okay. I'm going to jump in. It looks like I have enough time for one more. I went down a rabbit hole of thoughts over the last couple of days. So I have a lot more. I think probably turn this into a regular series of kind of diving into these things. So thank you, Farjar, for the great idea. I wanted to cover one of our Lux challenges, and Farjar was the co-pilot on this. And this is a Lux challenge is a live user experience challenge. So I said RUX earlier, which is a rapid user experience challenge. These are big events in our community. So these are high prized. First place typically is like 2,000. Second place is 1,500. Third place is 1,000. A Lux challenge is live at an event. So this was an original thing that we came up with. Now it's probably been 4 or 5 years at this point. And this was the 24th one that we ran, okay? And so this was a 23-hour live user experience challenge that we had at South by Southwest. So a Lux challenge typically is 24, 48 hours, while a RUX challenge is always 72 hours. So the RUX challenge was created based on our experiences with our Lux challenges. And this is at an event. So we launch it at the event. We typically interact with people at the event. And then, of course, we showcase what's going on, what the results at the event. I think the shortest Lux challenge we've ever ran was 12 hours. And so that was insane. But this one was 23 hours, and we were at South by Southwest. And so we asked designers to rapidly create a visual concepts for an iPhone app for Smart City. So really kind of, this was a couple years ago, but this applies to now. But we have all these different modes of transportation. How could this application understand kind of your daily commute and know that, take an Uber for so far, use the train, use a bus, right? So use a bike, walk, right? So like, what's the best way to get from point A to point B and C and, A to D and things like that. So it being a smart assistant in that regard. So in a Lux challenge, in this case, we asked for 7 screens and then a presentation screen because, hey, we're at an event. We want to be able to throw that presentation up pretty quick that the designer wants to showcase their ideas. So as part of this, we also asked some survey questions, and we use this as inputs into this challenge to have some fun. So the first one was what artists most likely to be on your playlist. So we're at the South by Southwest. We ran this survey, and so Adele. So Adele was our input into the color scheme. So the color scheme, the idea was like more of a muted colors, like what would like think like colors from her albums and colors that she tends to show across like her artwork and her albums. What's your favorite mode of transportation? So automobile. So this was input into just a simple icon logo for your app. Now we're not spending a lot of time on that. We're not asking our designers to come up with a crazy logo for the application. It's just, hey, use this as inspiration to make a mark. And then if you were building a smart city transportation mobile app, which feature would you consider your #1 priority? And time saver was the top one. And so this was like the main requirement in the Lux Challenge. It's like, hey, make sure that time saving is a critical thing as part of this. So this is what it looks like on the website. In this case, the first place was 1,500. All Lux Challenges now are 2,000, but this was back when this was number 24. I think we're up to number 40 at this point. But we've now refined those steps, and there are 8 prizes. So one of the reasons I wanted to capture this one today was because Gerald or Guy was our winner, and he just recently passed away. And so as I was looking at this Lux Challenge, I wanted to showcase his design, and Gerald was an amazing designer, and I miss him. And so next month we have Design Month, and we're going to dedicate it to Gerald's memory. And so out of the Philippines, and he's an amazing designer. Second place was Rio. Third was Abadavera, one of our top designers, 5-time TCO champion. Fourth was Chexper. Fifth was Caros. Sixth was Onyx K. Ronda, again, a long-time Top Coder studio design member. Tawibo and Cruz rounded out the top 8. So first was Gerald, or as I've always said his handle is GH3Ablo. I know it's Guy, but I've always pronounced it differently than everyone else. So I knew him for 10 years, and then finally got to meet him in Japan last year. So we all miss him, and I miss him dearly. So what I loved about his design to this approach was a smart city. Like, he really got into this idea of like, okay, the orange line, this idea of following, of this understanding of like, hey, the app's going to help tell you the right way to go, and it'll virtually show you that line. Obviously, we've seen other apps and commercials that use something similar to this, but the thought that he put into this to quickly kind of dive in, like, hey, right now the best option is to use the bus, use the train, to get through London at this time is to walk this far, take this. And so I really liked his approach to this. And then he also did a great job of illustrating out all the different features, proposed routes, waypoint markers, major points of interest. The customer was super engaged on this. It was a big hit at South by when we first looked at it and presented it. So just an overall great, within a 23-hour window, a lot of great thoughts that were put into this. And then, of course, all the different interactions. And we're seeing mobile screens. These are all presentation screens. Second was Rio. So he came up with Go Jarvis. Again, you see the muted tones. This is meant to capture from the Adele survey. And so he did a great job of embracing kind of like this scrolling approach to understanding your weather, but also saying, hey, right now, here's the services near you, and here's the best way to travel and get to where you want to go. Part of this was also understanding like your normal pattern. So what do you normally do? And so it would make recommendations to for how you would get to point A to B to C. Third was Abadavera. So again, his interpretation of the color scheme, going more with the purples and highlights. So if we were to go look at some of Adele's album artwork, we probably see inspiration from that. Again, When this came out, Birdbear in this case, I think was really exploring more of the Apple iOS kind of flat design patterns and understanding kind of like how the different recommendations from Apple HIG guidelines were coming out, and he was exploring some of that. Checkspur, again, brought in, I think he brought in a kind of a dark approach, but he did a great job of really understanding kind of like the display of showing how you would get from point A to point B and making that readily available. And then of course, if you need to buy tickets or if you have to do something, actually populating that information also. So you could do it all from your phone. And then of course, giving you this idea of clocks and alternative routes. Fifth was Karos. Again, these Lux challenges bring about a whole lot of different approaches. So the slight fact that this has, you know, the ability to show the route that you're at, where you're currently at, and then of course being able to bring up imagery that is showing the different things that you may be seeing as part of your trip. But a wide variety of approaches, all within 23 hours. Onyx K. Ronda. So one of our master icon logo guys, so he did a great job of simplifying a lot of the icons and creating things for this application, Smart Trip. So again, diving into the very first thing on my dashboard, I pull it up, it's taking me to, asking me to where I'm traveling to, and it's gonna find the best routes, and it's gonna suggest, and it's in a very large display, the ability to understand my profile, notifications, things like that. To Weibo, similar muted themes, but of course bringing in this idea, this highlight to be able to understand exactly what I want to focus in on. And then of course the steps along the way at the bottom of knowing what my route is and bringing voice into it. And then in Cruz, my thoughts on this one was bringing more, it's more of a traditional approach to it, but also bringing in the different brands that might be available. So in some ways, kind of a little bit of a marketplace that you could pick the one that is the rate that you want to leverage and use. And so suggesting of different options, but also based on your budget. So I thought that was a great idea. So Farjar, I went through that pretty quick. I think we're at the hour, but what do you think? Do you remember this one, and what were your thoughts on this one? Because I remember it was pretty quick, and I was in Austin, so.
Yeah, I still remember this one. I recognize that this is the Gia Blue Wings, and the one that I'm really impressed with his design is he is able to add all the interaction needed and also implementing the augmented reality. That's not really. He's taking a bold move using augmented reality where it's not really exploring at that time. So this is for the 2016, right?
Yeah.
I recall, yeah.
Yep. This is a few years ago. Yep.
Yeah. So the concept using augmented reality to define what should the best way for you to go from one place to another is a bold move at that time. So I think that makes him win this challenge.
Well, I guess we can tell by the iPhone mock-up which year it was, right? So
yeah.
But no, yeah, I think that's what stood out was you know, Gerald always had bold decisions, and you know they would win him prizes, or they would, you know, he would not win at all. But he always had very bold and approaches to things, and definitely loved all the different concepts and ideas that he brought. So. I do have more case studies, but I think, you know, we're at the hour. I'll let everyone, I think we'll look to maybe have another one of these and refine it and see where we can maybe be even more succinct with some of these. But I hope everyone had a great time learning about these 3 different projects. I will look at, are there any questions? If anybody wants to stick around for questions, I can answer a couple questions. Harshit, I don't know, is there any questions I need to answer?
No questions yet, Adam.
Okay, so I appreciate everyone joining today, and this was a lot of fun, a lot of memories, And I'm looking forward to maybe doing a few more of these and talking through some different projects. The key thing I'd like everyone to kind of get away to take away from this is that, you know, at Top Coder Design, you know, I could talk about a single challenge, but really our UX process, the way we approach design with our customers is multi-stepped. It is iterative. It is fast. But the idea is to get thoughts out there, to get concepts out there, for all of us to collaborate and understand and dig into the problem to find multiple solves quickly, so we can you know, bubble that up and have our customer experience, you know, some great different ideas in a short amount of time. I don't ever promote that we go and build these things right away. I mean, it takes even more iteration, right? We use design and high fidelity and modern tools to really kind of do rapid prototyping, do rapid wireframing, right? It's all about leveraging what we have and being able to dive in and do our research and understand what is the best, you know, UI and UX. And for me, it's all of our different members around the world bringing their experiences to the problem, and their experience may create a completely different solve. So everyone have a great day. Thank you for your time. And this was fun. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.